It's nice to imagine that movies are timeless, but movies, like everything else, break down with age. Digital files get corrupted, file formats become obsolete, and film strips decay. The images you're seeing now are of film strips that were buried more than 90 years ago in an empty swimming pool in Alaska, which wasn't even a state back then. But anyway, the footage was unearthed by accident in 1978, preserved, later painstakingly digitized, damage it all, and then incorporated into Bill Morrison's 2016 documentary, Dawson City, Frozen Time. There's a natural impulse to try to look beyond the decay, to watch the film beneath, but Morrison puts the decay front and center. And it's not the first time he's done this. Throughout his career, he's experimented with visibly damaged film. It's not something he wants you to overlook, it's a part of the movie. Look, I won't try to sell you too hard on this one for your next movie night. It's a feature-length found footage critical history of an Alaskan boomtown with an experimental use of water damage. But it's also doing something you likely won't see anywhere else. The decay, the thing that you're normally meant to overlook, means something here. Three things, in fact, probably more, but in Dawson City, Frozen Time, first, the decay serves a metaphorical purpose. Morrison uses the footage uncovered in Dawson City, Alaska, to tell the story of the town itself. A boomtown that brought thousands west on a perilous quest for gold before it bust in the early 20th century. In Morrison's hands, the decay plays a part in that story. Many parts, in fact. Sometimes the decay seems to represent fire, or the corrupting influence of gold, or a kind of gauzy filter through which many view the past. By choosing evocative images of decay as he tells particular parts of the city's history, Morrison creates meaning from images that were really the result of accident and neglect. But the decay isn't just a metaphor. It's like a second movie playing on top of the first. It's hard not to think about the footage in those terms, as something beneath the decay, but in reality, there isn't any beneath. The damage is the footage, no less than the photographs. And the movie works to remind you of that fact, at least sometimes. Sometimes Morrison seeks out footage that seems to depict in some way the aspect of Dawson City's history that he's trying to explain in the movie's many titles. But sometimes he seeks out images in which you can't help but focus on the damage. Sometimes it's even gorgeous. Sometimes the decay and the original footage seem impossibly to interact. Morrison step-printed frames of damage, which means that he duplicated individual frames to help you see the decay better. And that push and pull between being drawn into the footage and noticing the decay extends to the movie's sound design. The movie's sound designer, John Summers, uses Foley sounds to immerse you in the worlds represented in the images. But he sometimes uses static to draw your eyes to the decay. He even made it... Well, I'll let him explain it.
So my starting point was writing a little bit of software that analyzed the degradation levels. I used that to generate the sound when the degradation occurs.
So, just as soon as you start to feel like you're watching a Ken Burnsian history of Dawson City unfold, the movie reminds you, with a purposeful sense of technique, that you're really looking at a collapsing strip of acetate, an illusion of movement and depth. So what is that purpose? I haven't really talked too much about Dawson City itself. The story Morrison tells is complex and many-stranded. In interviews, he's described the documentary as a tragedy, but there's a lot of different ways to read that. Is it a tragedy about the gold rush settlers who journeyed west only to find poverty and hardship? Or of the women who suffered under the yoke of the town's patriarchy? Or of the local Han, whose land was stolen from them by the gold rush settlers? It's like the whole town was built on an illusion of its own, a series of lies that settlers told each other and themselves about the wealth that they would find in the Yukon, and the moral justifications they invented for displacing the people who lived for thousands of years on the land that became Dawson City. Often those lies are visible in the footage that Morrison chooses, images of heroic frontiersmen or of gold rush settlers finding their fortune. They're just stories. But they're the stories from which Dawson City was built, as seductive and fragile as the illusions of depth and movement beneath the film's decay. So what does the damage mean? Sometimes it's a metaphor. Sometimes it's a new film on top of the original. And ultimately, I think it's a reminder that a photograph can be a lie, and that history isn't just written by the winners, it's written by you, choosing, whether you like it or not, which perspective to embrace, which to confront as an illusion, which to ignore altogether. Are you watching a woman dancing? Or a series of decaying photographs? What do you choose?